Hi everyone, welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. Welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. My name is Gina Pike. I'm so happy that you're here today with me. I am going to be talking today about a project that I'm doing for Knitober. This is Stephen West's Shawlography, which is his mystery knit along for 2021. Now, we have been knitting this for a couple of weeks now. Clue 2 just came out on Friday, and I've been working on Clue 2 all weekend. And he warned us that this clue would be a little bit of knitting. It is a lot of knitting, but it has been fun. I will show you the clue here in a minute. If you do not want to see, if you were knitting this and you do not want to see this, please save this video for later to watch, because this is going to be a spoiler video. I'm about to show my clue 2, so just a heads up. If you are interested in seeing it, I'm going to go through each section. Now, clue 1 I talked about in another video. I'll put a link up above and down in the description box below if you want to go check that out first. I do have a tip on how I knitted the I-cord loops with DPNs. Now, Mr. West is so great on his techniques. I will link his video above. I'm not going to improve on his techniques, but I do have a couple of tips to share with you that are similar to what I shared in Clue 1, but not exactly, because they're for Clue 2. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get into it. Let me show you my shawl, and then we'll break down the parts as we go along. Now, this is my shawl. This is what it looks like. We stopped with Clue 1 right here at these I-cord loops. That's where we start Clue 2. We start by combining these stitches, doing some double yarn overs, and then in the double yarn overs, we created 5 stitches with our color A. Now, my color A is this bright green, and then for this next section, it's a slip stitch color work section. I used my color A, this green, and my color D, which is this kind of medium color blue. And it turns out to look like this. I have some pictures of it I'll be showing as I explain it, but it's really just simple slip stitch color work. Very, very easy, very relaxing knitting, very fun to see the colors striping. And then, as you can see, this stitch was slipped a couple of rows to bring it all the way up to the next section, creating the beautiful lines that also line up with the I-cord loop down below. Alright, so that was section 5. It was called Slip Stitch Columns. Next section is section 6, which is called Welts. And that is this section here, right above the Slip Stitch Columns. So we're going to be talking about this section here. And I'm turning it this way so you can see that these are little pockets of fabric. Can you see? It's like little bitty, it's like you took a piece of fabric and folded it over, and you created these little pockets of fabric, and they also line up with these columns, because you can see there's a definition right there where that slip stitch is. And all these little pockets, this is my color E, the lightest color that I have. The way that you do this is, it's not, I would say it looks like it could be pretty easy to do, but I would say this is probably one of the harder sections we have, the swelts. And I have a video clip that shows it. Again, Mr. West shows how to do it. But I have a little bit of a trick that I used to maybe make this a little bit easier. And let me explain why. So the first thing you do is you knit 10 rows of stockinette stitch with your color E. And then after you've knitted the 10 rows, now 10 rows below, you have this gorgeous slip stitch column work, right? Which has 5 stitches of your color B, 1 stitch of your color green. So that's the 6 stitches. So for this section, after you knit the 10 rows, to make this fabric fold, you have to go into the back of your knitting and pick up 5 stitches of the color, the blue color, which is my color D, and you pick them up as you're knitting and knit them together with the stitch that's on your needle, and it's one of these E stitches. And then when you get to this center stitch, this green, you go into the front 10 stitches below and go through this loop right here that is slip stitched. Can you see how that it creates that line there? And you go through that, and then you drop the stitch that's on your needle 10 rows, and that's why you've got that little bit of the lines there, because you dropped that one stitch, and it's caught because you're going into that stitch below it on the needle. Now I have a short video clip that shows it, and the reason why I want to point it out is because for this section I used DPNs again. DPNs are our friends, and I used it. Stephen West picks the stitches up as he's going along, and he's like, it doesn't really matter where you pick it up, just as long as you're kind of picking up a stitch close to 10 rows below. What I decided to do was, you're going into this first section here with the green and the blue, and what I did was I went through and I picked up stitches with my DPN for each little section, so that it would make it move a little bit faster, plus I could concentrate on it and make sure I got it right. I'm going to show the video clip. As I'm about to start section 7 on the triangles, as he explained, you're going to be picking up a stitch from the wrong side row 10 rows down. So I have my ends woven in, as you can see right there. So until I get to this part right here, it's going to be a little bit harder to see, but you're going to be picking up those 5 stitches that you knit, and then you have the color. The next color is the slip stitch, that's where you're going to do the stitch from the front. So you can see that's my green. So I'm picking up 5 blue stitches, and I thought, instead of picking them up as I go along, I'm going to use my friend, the DPN again, and I'm going to pick up the 5 stitches before I get started for each row, or before each little section, to help me identify them. So I picked up 5 stitches from the back, and I'm going to knit these as I go along. Then I'll do the one on the front, then I'll stop again and pick up the next 5 blue stitches, where you can see here, let me show you what they look like without the DPN in there. You can see after that those stitches, that'll be the stitch that's going to be on the front. Then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll pick up those 5 stitches. That'll be on the front. Then I'll come back and pick up those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a DPN. Hold it in place, and that way I can have each stitch have 5 stitches already picked out, like this, for that section, to help me move along a little bit faster. Hopefully you can see that by using the DPN for the back, it just made it easier to, I did it right before each section, and it just made that section a lot easier for me in picking up those 5 stitches that you needed to create these welts. Now for this section, if you haven't gotten here yet, this welt section, I would say take your time. Don't rush it. It takes some time to do this section. You would think that it wouldn't, but it does. And you don't really, I don't think it would be that easy to fix a mistake. So just take your time, and make sure you get those stitches lining up right. Again, you're going to always be slipping in that stitch that's been slipped from the section down below. And we're going to be knitting into that slip stitch. Sorry about that. I said that incorrectly. You're going to be knitting into that slip stitch to create the little pockets of fabric. And then, of course, the rest of the stitches will be combining with the ones from the back. So that's the welts. After you do the welts section, you can see that you go into these beautiful color triangles. This is my color C, this blue. It is different than my E. You can see it's a little bit darker. And then I have this dark color, dark blue, which is my color B. And you can see it's the same color from down below, the main color that I started, doing those ridges with in the first section. So I've got a nice contrast in my colors. If you don't, he recommends you just, sorry to be so close, he recommends that you kind of stick with your colors, because the way that you originally set them up, because you might run out of colors if you just start interchanging them. You might run out of yarn. But that's kind of how mine worked out, because that is my color B and that is my color C. And then you have these beautiful slip stitch triangles. Very easy color work. Just a bunch of slip stitches and straight knitting, like knit and purl. And that's what they look like. You can see it's not just a triangle going up, but there's an inverted triangle here, and then another triangle here that goes up, and then another inverted triangle beside it. It's a little hard to see the top one because of the bobble, but that's what it looks like. And I believe there's 46 of those. I think so. Now, the next section is the baubles, and that is done with my color. It was color A, which is my bright green color, and you can see these beautiful textured baubles. Again, this is all about the texture with these loops, these welts, these baubles, and he shows us how to do these baubles by, you have to do a knit, yarn over knit, yarn over knit into this stitch that is at the top of the triangle. You're gonna do it every 5 stitches. You're gonna slip 5 stitches in between these baubles. You always end up at the top of this triangle to do the bauble. So that's one thing you should remember when you're knitting this. If you haven't knitted it yet, that you should be at the top. If you're not, you probably have a little bit of an error. So take the time to make sure that you can figure out what's going on there and fix it. Now for these bauble stitches, you're going to do a knit, yarn over knit, yarn over knit. So you take 1 stitch and it becomes 5. And then you're going to slide them back and forth between your needles, you're going to slide it from your right needle to your left needle 4 times and knit those 5 stitches over and over again. Now you guys know, if you watched my first video, I don't like to slide stuff like that. Those slip stitches, that was the one thing I showed you how I do in video 1, in clue 1. So here again, I brought out my handy dandy DPNs, and I have a short video clip to show you how I did it. Now we're to this point where I'm working on clue 2. I've already shown you how I used DPNs for this section here for the welts to pick up the stitches in the back again. So now I've been working on these baubles, these beautiful baubles, and this is the same. When you watch this video, it's a technique. It's knitting and sliding them back and forth between these right and left hand needles. You guys know I don't like to do that very much, so I'm going to show you how I'm doing this using my DPNs. Again, it's very similar to what I did when I did these little I-cord loops down below here. So it's not anything new that I haven't shown you, but I am showing you how I do the baubles. And you do have to be a little bit careful because you have your live stitches on both sides. You kind of push them back a little bit so they're not so close to the edge. And you have to work around these needles as well, so you don't get it all wrapped up. So the first thing you do is you grab a DPN. Oh, the other thing I want to point out too is there's 5 stitches in between each bauble. And when you knit your bauble, you're going to be knitting into the stitch that's right above the top of your triangle. You have the top of your triangle, your color C, and then another stitch, and you're knitting into that stitch. If you're not, there's something that is off. And I'm checking as I go along because it's easier to make sure you have 5 stitches in between each bauble as you're doing it instead of going back and having to undo it later. All right, so the first thing you do is you do a knit, yarn over knit in this 1 stitch. So this 1 stitch is going to become 5. So you knit, do a yarn over, do not drop that off the left hand needle. And again, you're having to work around these other needles. Go back into the same stitch, do a knit stitch, do another yarn over, and the last stitch is a knit stitch. So in essence, your 1 stitch has become 5. And now you're going to knit this 4 times. So I just slide it. I don't have to do any transfer because I'm on my DPNs. That's the beauty of doing it this way. This is the lazy person's doing the lazy method for doing baubles and I-cords. Alright, there's a 3rd stitch wrapping there. Again, I'm counting 5 stitches as I do this as well, so that I don't miss one. There's 3, 4, and 5. Okay, that was the first time I knit it. So I got to do 3 more. Slide it down. Here's 2. As you can see, I have my knitting being supported by my couch, or you can put a pillow. Again, that just helps you to not let your needles go flying everywhere. I mean, you're knitting so that your stitches will go flying. That was 2. So 2, you just slide it down. 3. The 3rd time you're knitting all 5 stitches. And you got to do 4 times total. So on this next time is going to be the last time. So now on the last time, I just slide it down to the end. And what I do is, since I want it to end up on the right hand needle anyway, the last time I'm going to knit it right onto the right hand needle. Plus, the next part, when you're passing these stitches over, these tips on these DPNs are not very pointed, so it's easier to use these on my needles to pass these stitches over. So after you knit it 4 times, the next thing you do is you grab the 2nd stitch on your right hand needle, pass it over and off. Then you grab the next stitch, pass it over and off. The next stitch, pass it over and off. And the next stitch, pass it over and off. And there you go. There is your bauble, and that's what it looks like. And I do that over and over again. There's 46 of these. The next step, I mean, he tells you in his tutorial, but the next part is you do a slip stitch, knit stitch, slip stitch, knit stitch, slip stitch. So again, there's 5 stitches in between each. And then we're right back at the top of that triangle to do the next bauble with a DPN. And that's how I'm doing my baubles. I hope that you find that easier. For me, it is easier. It is, like I said, you still got to work around these needles when you do the hardest part is that knit, yarn over knit, yarn over knit. But if you can get around that, it is, I think it just flies a lot faster than having to transfer your stitches back and forth between your needles for each one of these baubles. So I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. That gives us all kinds of texture. And again, I'll insert that video so you can see how I've just changed it up a little bit. I'm doing exactly what he told us to do, except I'm using a DPN as a little bit of a shortcut so I don't have to transfer my stitches back and forth on 2 needles. Alright, so that's that. Now, we're to the very last section. Now, this last section is going to be using colors colors D and E. Colors D and E. And my colors D and E are these 2 colors here. My D is this one right here, this medium looking blue. And then my E is this really light color that I use for my welt stitch. And it created these beautiful contrasting garter stitch ridges, triangles. Now these were done with short rows. So you start out, you do short rows, you start out long, and it gets shorter and shorter as you knit. And you're only doing this for like 100 and something stitches on this side. After you finish this side and get to the end, then you turn it on the wrong side and you do it again over here. So you have exactly the same kind of triangle for the same amount of stitches, but just starting on the wrong side. So see, you end up with 2 short row triangular wedges on either side of your work. Now there are some stitches here in the center. Let's see, it goes from here to here that you did not knit. So those were not knitted, but those were, and that's the garter stitch wedge, short row, garter stitch wedge. And this one, it's not really garter stitch because you're doing follow the pattern, knit, purl, purl, knit. And then here's the other squishy wedge for the other side. Same colors. You can see how you're alternating the colors. My color's D and my color's E. Very squishy, nice fabric. Similar, very similar to, but different than the garter stitch wedges down below. And again, this is what it's looking like. I'll try to get up close so you can see it. Forgive the ends that I haven't woven in. And this is so full of texture. It is just blowing my mind how full of texture this is. And that is clue 2 for Shawlography, West Knits MKAL 2021. And I'm liking the colors, I'm liking the texture, and I'm just curious to see where he's going to take it. I mean, I can kind of think that maybe, you know, coming back across the top, okay, we got those stitches in the center that haven't been used. It'll kind of create a more triangular part on top of that. It'll be interesting to see how it all looks, but there we go. That's what that looks like. So thank you so much for letting me share this with you today. I hope you've enjoyed my little shortcut tips. Again, they're nothing new. I kind of shared a little bit of a similar type of a thing in clue 1, but it is, you know, I look for the ways to make it simpler for me, make it go faster, because I am a little bit of a slower knitter. So I like to try to look for shortcuts and also ways that I will not drop my stitches or anything like that. And the less times I have to transfer my stitches back and forth, the less times I have an opportunity to drop a stitch. So thank you so much for watching this. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you are new here, I do like to talk a lot about knitting, crochet, yarn, yarn hauls, popular projects going on in the knitting and crochet world. We would love to have you join us. For all of you who watch my videos time and time again, thank you so much for watching them. I really appreciate you guys so much, and you guys are the reason why I'm here. So thank you very much. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you all very, very soon. All right, bye-bye.